Come to order if we could, please. Supervisor Hess, would you lead us in invocation, please, sir?
Please bow your heads. Almighty God, we begin this meeting by asking for your guidance as we deal with issues that affect the future of our county and our citizens. Heavenly Father, you're an awesome God, and you have blessed us in so many ways. On this beautiful fall evening, we thank you for the bounty of the harvest and the fruit of the land. We are grateful for the hard work of those in our local agricultural community who contribute so much to the vitality of our county. As Election Day draws near, we thank you for the freedom we enjoy in this country to elect our leaders, and we thank you for the men and women who served in our armed forces to preserve that freedom. We ask your blessing upon those gathered here. Guide us all and give us the strength and desire to continue to serve you, our county, our Commonwealth, and our great nation. In your heavenly name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Vice Chairman Fisher, will you lead us in the pledge, please, sir?
Please stand and face the flag. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, sir. Adoption of the agenda. Are there any proposed changes?
No, sir.
Make a motion to approve, sir.
Motion to approve the agenda is presented. Is there a second?
Second.
Second. Any discussion? All those in favor, aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The agenda is adopted. The consent agenda, tentative items are tabs A and C. Are there any changes?
No, sir.
The board like to handle the consent agenda?
Move for approval.
Motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Second. Any discussion? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Consent agenda is adopted. This is a portion of the meeting that the board sets aside for citizen comment on agenda items only that are not subject to public hearing. Does anyone have anything they'd like to bring forward?
We had no one sign up, Mr. Chairman.
No one? Thank you. Board of Supervisors comments, if I could, I'd like to welcome Ms. Erin Swisshelm.
Yes, you said it right.
New Assistant Commonwealth Attorney, or County Attorney, I'm sorry. So we're really pleased to have you with us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Board comments, anyone? All right. Brings us to presentation of NACO awards. Vice Chairman Fisher, if you could help me. Ms. Murphy, would you join us, please? The National Association of Counties, NACO, unites America's 3,069 county governments. Founded in 1935, NACO brings county officials together to advocate with a collective voice on national policy, exchange ideas, and build new leadership skills. Since 1970, the annual Achievement Awards Program is a rewards program run by the National Association of Counties that recognizes innovative county government initiatives in 21 different categories. More than 110 counties and organizations won awards in 2016. The county's entry Commissioner of the Revenue Business-Friendly, Citizen-Friendly through Technology received an Achievement Award for Information Technology. Frederick County's leveraged technology to modernize annual business license renewal and other processes to make it convenient and easy for businesses while simultaneously saving the county money and staff time. In 2012, 70% of business licenses were renewed online. In 2013, 73%. And this year, the highest yet at 78%. As a result of continued expansion of services, businesses now have access to 21 online functions. This has been an ongoing effort by the Business Division, headed by Bev Risotto, and supported by Commissioner of Revenue Ellen Murphy, and we congratulate you on this achievement.
Thank you very much. I wish Bev could have been here tonight.
I wish so too. Please congratulate her for us. There you go. Thank you. And now, Andrew Farrar, if you could join us, please, sir. Thank you, sir. So Frederick County's entry entitled Polling Place Locator Serves Voters received an Achievement Award for Civic Education and Public Information. This GI Best web application allows voters to find and get direction to their polling place and gather information about their district, their elected representatives at each level of government, how to contact them, and this application gives citizens easier access to all of this information. This app was developed in-house in our GIS and IT department. Congratulations, sir. Thank you very much. Well done. Face the camera. Thank you, sir. Well done.
I'll try to do right by you.
Item number 2 is committee appointments. Northwestern Community Services Board.
Mr. Chairman, they're still trying to connect the applicant and the board. I reached out to them after the last meeting, and they're still trying to get in touch to give him additional information.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Historic Resources Advisory Board. I hope folks are working. That one's been there a while. Thank you. Shawnee Land Sanitary District Advisory Committee.
No, sir, I regrettably have not taken the opportunity to get with the people who have applied, and I will do that in the next 2 weeks.
Thank you, sir. Economic Development Authority, Stan Crockett and John R. Riley Jr. It looks like they're both willing to continue to serve. How would the board like to handle this one?
Mr. Chairman, I would like to put up for reappointment Mr. John R. Rowley Jr., Mr. Stan Crockett as the Frederick County representatives to the Economic Development Authority of Frederick County.
Second.
And a second, is there any discussion? All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed, no? Mr. Riley and Mr. Crockett are so appointed. Hanley Regional Library Board?
Mr. Chairman, as liaison on that, I was going to speak to Ms. Strom Miller at the last meeting, but had an emergency right before I went into the library that afternoon and was unable to meet with her. But I will meet with her to see if she's willing to serve again.
She can.
Thank you, sir.
Yes. That's correct.
Yes, okay. So,
Mr. Chairman.
did we have an application?
We did, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Drumheller is not eligible for reappointment, but we do have an application for Mr. Carl Rush.
All right,
as a
so how would the
possible
board like
appointee.
to handle that one? This is Carl Rush, proposed for the Hanley Regional Library Board.
I would move that we accept the application.
Motion to appoint, is there a second?
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Any discussion? All those in favor, aye? Aye. Opposed, no? Mr. Carl Rush is appointed to the Hanley Regional Library Board, and we thank him for his service. Board of Equalization. Where are we on that one? Do we have any recommendations? Not yet? We'll continue to work. Board of Zoning Appeals.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
it's through the end of the year, and I'll have an appointment before the end of the year.
All right, sir. Thank you. All right, brings us to the end of the list. Committee reports, Parks and Recreation. Is that, Mr. Dunn? Is that you?
It is. John, do you want, the Parks and Recreation Commission will make a recommendation, and we can discuss that recommendation on Sharando Park.
Thank you, Mr. Dunn, Mr. Chairman, members
Welcome.
of the board. John Turkel, Parks and Recreation. The recommendation of the the Parks and Recreation Commission is to adopt the master plan update for the north part of Sharando Park. The purpose of the master plan is to guide the development of the park area over time. It's a high-level view of our anticipated development picture. The park was acquired in 1974. The first master plan was in 1987. The current master plan that this would replace was from 2002. So here we are, 2016. This update came around because the Parks and Recreation Commission looks to the relevance of the master plan documents to see if updating these to occur. We have had the 2012 Parks and Recreation Community Survey and changing regulations, which have led to a vision that an updated need to occur. And specifically to the north part of the park, as that's the area that is less developed and has more issues with those criteria. So we can go to the map. The map on the screen is the proposed master plan map for North Strando Park. The philosophy of the map remains unchanged, and that is that the southern portion of the area that we're looking at is more active rec. It's, as you can see, athletic fields, the disc golf, and then the northern portion is more passive recreation, which is the walking trails, the dog park, and a lot more of the open space picnic pavilions. The major changes that we're looking at from 2002 to this version right here, a little bit of limited of the active rec with developments that have happened in the community, particularly with rectangular play fields. We've reduced the number of rectangular play fields. The popularity of the disc golf has allowed that to remain in place there. And then there was a vision for a lake along Rice Run, which basically bisects the area that we're looking at on the map. And that was removed primarily due to cost concerns and regulatory concerns with the building of a new dam in that area. And the north part, as I mentioned, really remains quite the same as what we see up here, with the exception of a proposed dog park area, and then of course the layout changes with the lake. But I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have. And again, the recommendation from the Parks and Recreation Commission is for adoption of the master plan update.
Questions, anyone?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir. Supervisor Dunn.
I did have a conversation with Mr. Robertson and put in a call to Mr. Longerbeam, and I have some concerns on the cost. So we've had this conversation. The cost is about $9.6 million total. I think overall it's a good plan, but I think that the cost might be more excessive at this point than I'm willing to agree to. So in Area 2 and in Area 1, there are approximately 21, 22 shelters. Those shelters are approximately $62,000 apiece. In Area 4, there's a maintenance building for over $400,000. And so what I'd like to do, Mr. Chairman, or discussion with the board, is to send this back to the Planning Parks and Rec Commission and see if we can come up with a price tag that is less than the 9.6. The reason I say that is there are other areas in the county that also have needs for money. We're going to go into a situation for capital improvements that are going to be substantial. If the structures are reduced, the cost is reduced, and if over time you need to put in more structures, then we can do that. So for example, if you had 3 instead of 10, and those were used all the time, then you say we have a need for additional structures. If they were not used, then at that point in time the population is not such that you do need those structures. And so rather than just authorize a complete $9.6 million project, I'm looking to scale it back with the comments to the Parks and Rec that if it is used and is used extensively, then the additional items can be put in, but I'd rather start out with a smaller situation than a larger situation. There's at least $1 million to $2 million of additional cost that I think could be saved in the shorter run. I'd like to go back and work on that, send it back to Parks and Rec, work with them and the chairman, and see if there's a different proposal that can come through. They're welcome to keep that proposal. That's their prerogative, but I just, have that input. So that's my thought process. Comments, questions?
Was there a motion in there?
All right, I'll make a motion to recommit to Parks and Rec for a reconsideration of the total project cost to possibly remove some of the cost structures at this time.
So you've heard the motion. Is there a second?
I'd say a second.
For discussion then?
Yes.
Okay. And discussion or questions for Mr. Turkle? Yes, sir. Supervisor Lofton.
If I understand this correctly, what you're bringing this forward is for us to approve this concept, not necessarily the price tag. Would that be correct? Even though there's prices associated with it, it would have to come back in during the CIP discussions if you want to make any of this in reality. These are just to give us an idea of what is proposed and the potential cost.
Yeah, again.
Not
going-
asking for $9 million.
Again, going back to the purpose, is to guide the development over time for the area of the park. This essentially is a 30,000-foot view of what the park may look like in the future. This is the third version of the master plan. Has changed over time. The numbers that are associated with the items on this map are, again, at a 30,000-foot view. In terms of the actual budgeting process and the development process, it gets refined as areas and sub-areas are identified all the way until the day that you open the bids and actually know what it is that you're going to be paying for a certain element. So there is no request for funding at this time.
That's the answer I wanted. Thank you.
Supervisor Slaughter.
How often do you update these plans? Since you said this dated back to 2002?
The schedule of updating the plans is basically as needed, as determined by the Parks and Recreation Commission. The existing master plan for Clearbrook Park is still from 1987 because that still has relevance, and the development of Clearbrook is somewhat limited because it is developed to a fairly great degree, as is the area for the south of 277 at Sharando Park. So that would still remain under the guidance of the 2002 plan. The only area that really needed updating and why we focused on the north part is because that area did have significant changes. So that's really all we're addressing at this update.
And may I ask another question, please? You have open space listed on the map, and I'm wondering if the open space, does it lend itself to, it seems like we have a tremendous need for soccer fields. Does it lend itself to soccer fields and various other things that we need?
Absolutely. So there's two ways of looking at what you just said. First, the south side does have additional soccer fields identified, and so does this area here. We have reduced the number of overall soccer fields at the Sharando Park plan due to our survey results, identification of need in the community specifically, and also the fact that the private sector is looking to add soccer fields on their own. Now, this plan is quite restrained in its development commitment of areas. And so all of the areas that are left as open space potentially could be used for something else in the next iteration of a plan.
Defining the plan. Okay. Thank you, sir.
Sure.
Other questions or comments?
It appears from the
Supervisor Hess.
committee report that the Parks and Rec Commission recommended approval to the board.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Supervisor Fisher.
I just want to confirm part of what's heard, but what I perceive this to be is a master plan is a large conceptual thing of where you want to grow to. It can be very functional. I commend you for putting numbers to it. A lot of times master plans don't have estimated costs. But I think the bigger thing here is in your planning, it allows you to know where you want things to go so you don't, for instance, run a utility line right through where you want to structure. Or if you get somebody that comes along and says, hey, I'd like to give you the funds for a shelter in memory of so-and-so, you know where to put it. And that's really what I see the function of your master plan is. So as long as I'm not going someplace that the Parks and Rec Board didn't want to go, I think that's what this is all about, is a plan so you can grow into, you know, where you want to put things so things aren't done helter-skelter and you end up with some park that doesn't function well.
Mr. Chairman?
Supervisor Dunn.
Can we have a discussion, or do you want to answer questions from staff first?
John, did you want to respond to Supervisor Fisher's
I
comment?
didn't pick a question in there. I would just nod in agreement if that's
Okay.
what you were looking for.
Yeah. that's what-
Question.
Supervisor Dunn.
If there were a revision, for example, in Area 2 where there's like 11 shelters, you could say, we can build 3 now, and in the future, if the population grows, we can address those. But is that correct?
That's correct.
I'm not trying to put you on the spot. I'm just, and then if we can get into, if it's appropriate to get into a discussion, Mr. Chairman, the reason I'm making that comment is that down the road, I know that Mr. Lofton and Mr. Fisher have made comments on an overall plan, but if you have a lower cost, then, let me rephrase it, if you have a higher cost, then there's a tendency to say, fine, we've approved, for example, 10 shelters, we need to fill them. If you've approved 3 or 4, and then you say, we need additional, they can come back to the board and say, we'd like to have some additional. But I'm just trying to move away from the tendency to say, we've approved 10, therefore we should have 10 as funds, and instead say, let's approve X, lower than 10, and if you need more, we'll give them to you. That was the thought process. And that discussion here is $1 million to $2 million discussion that we're having. So that's why I'm raising the issue.
The balance point I hear being made is that it's a master plan and there's no request for funding to do any of it at this point, and that the deeper discussion would happen when they're ready to request funding.
And if this does go through and that occurs, my concern is that the commission says you've approved this plan and therefore fund it. And at that point in time, if I came back and said, well, I'm looking to do a lower level, you might have a concern. If the plan were approved at a lower level and that were flushed out, and then at some future point in time it was needed to be increased, I'd be supportive of that. But I'm more inclined to say, what do you need now, as opposed to what I considered at this point to be an overkill on the number of shelters, which are $62,000 apiece. For a maintenance program, it's $400,000. For water and sewer that has to be put in here. So there's a lot of things here. The parking lots are a function of the overall plan. So all those have cost to them, and I'm just trying to bring down those costs. And in a future point in time, I would be supportive of increasing that as the population grows. So that's just a position. We can agree to disagree, but that's the thought process behind it.
Further discussion, questions, anyone? All right, you ready to vote? Supervisor Dunn?
Aye.
Supervisor Hess?
No.
Supervisor Fisher?
No.
Supervisor Lofton?
No.
Supervisor Wells?
Oh,
Supervisor Slaughter?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, and the motion's defeated.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
with that motion being defeated, I'm asking as a question, is there then a motion to approve this, or does this stay in limbo? What's the process here?
It's a master plan. I think the commission's recommended approval. I think that's what they've asked the board to do, is to approve their master plan, but they're not asking us to approve financing or appropriate money or even have a figure other than a very responsive, I think, idea of what the overall expense may be. Does that answer your question?
Does there need to be another vote or not?
We're being asked to adopt or to approve their master plan.
Then I would suggest that one of the people that voted on the other side make that proposal.
Okay, so how would the board like to handle the request?
Mr. Chairman, I think a lot of thought has gone into this. Certainly, public input has gone into that. And I believe it's a good concept. I like the plan. I understand Supervisor Dunn's point about the cost, but I'm looking at this as a futuristic look at the land and its potential that the park system has. And I believe it's a good concept. I think it's a futuristic concept that the citizens have had input into. I would make a motion to accept and approve the Shenandoah Park North Master Plan as recommended by the Parks and Rec Commission, knowing that there's no funding with this. It's all concept.
You've heard the motion. Is a motion to approve the master plan. Is there a second?
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Second. Discussion.
Quick discussion, not to belabor dead.
Supervisor Dunn.
Not to belabor a point, but to Mr. Lofton, whom I respect here, my point was that I wanted a lower figure because my concern is in the future, they're going to say, you've already approved X number of shelters, X number of items, and so I'd rather have started with a lower figure. So we'll agree to disagree. That's all. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Further discussion? Anyone? Supervisor Lofton?
If I may respond just very quickly, again, I understand Supervisor Dunn's point, but I'd much rather see a broader range of cost, and knowing that if they come back in for it, it can always be tailored down, as to have them come in with a lower cost, and then all of a sudden they decide they want more. I'd rather see the more now and maybe give them the less later, but I do understand that point. Thank you.
Further discussion? Anyone? Are we ready to vote? Supervisor Slaughter?
Aye. Excuse me. Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Supervisor Wells? Supervisor Lofton?
Aye.
Supervisor Fisher?
Aye.
Supervisor Hess?
Aye.
Supervisor Dunn?
Nay.
Chair votes aye, and the motion carries. All right, that brings us to,
I just had one quick question on the information in the report, the recommendation, or excuse me, not to accept property for donation. Where was that property located? Do you happen to know, Blaine, were you there?
Mr. Turco, can you, or Mr. Robertson, there's items on the boundaries of the there's items on the boundary of that park, and I believe they were in the northwest portion of that. There's a private residence in.
No, this was the recommendation that, say, not accept property offered as a donation from the Potomac Appalachian Trail Club due to its remote location and cost to maintain. Where was that property located?
Go ahead.
It was located on Back Creek,
On the western,
basically
so on the West Virginia, it's inside Virginia,
a
but
quarter
on
of
the
a
West
mile from the
Virginia.
West Virginia line, and you couldn't get.
Can't get there from here,
You can't get there, yeah, without going in and around through Berkeley County.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
thank you, sir.
And one quick comment, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
I do appreciate staff's comment on that. I want the planning commission to know that I appreciate the work in. My statements stand. So, Mr. Robertson, good job, well done, appreciate it. And to Mr. Longerbeam, thank you.
All right, that brings us to Finance Committee. Supervisor Slaughter?
Okay, the Finance Committee held a meeting on October 19th. Items number 1 and 2 were approved under consent agenda, and I would so move.
Have a motion, is there a second?
Second, Mr. Chairman.
And a second, is there any discussion?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman.
Supervisor Dunn?
So, on 1 and 2, that was the pay increase, is that correct? And the next one?
No, sir. Item number 1 was the Department of Social Services requesting a supplemental appropriation in the amount of $11,400 for foster care and adoption, and it represented additional state funds.
Okay.
Is that the question that you had? Because this sheriff one was a donation for $125.
Right, we're good.
And no local funds.
Further discussion? Supervisor Dunn?
Aye.
Supervisor Hess?
Aye.
Supervisor Fisher?
Aye.
Supervisor Lofton?
Aye.
Supervisor Wells?
Aye.
Supervisor Slaughter?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, and the motion carries.
Item number 3 on the agenda was the Transportation Director requested Development Projects Fund supplemental appropriation in the amount of $3,620,000. This amount represents Phase 2 of Renaissance Drive. The project has a 50% reimbursement from VDOT. Let's see. The committee, actually, Mr. Bishop had when we were talking about this at Finance, had asked for an appropriation. John, this isn't the bridge.
No, the cost estimate that was provided was for the at-grade crossing.
At the grade crossing. Okay, so essentially what we came away with at Finance Committee was that they were asking for a supplemental appropriation in the amount of $1,200,000 $67,288. And that would cover Phase 2 of the project for planning and design. And then John would come back, or Transportation would come back and ask for that at a later date, the additional funds that would make up the $3 million. So the request was to appropriate $1,267,288, 1.267288.
Got it.
And that
Thank-
was for the at-grade crossing. And I would so move.
Second, Mr.
Motion and
Chairman.
a second. Discussion? Anyone? Supervisor Slaughter?
Aye.
Supervisor Wells?
Aye.
Supervisor Lofton?
Aye.
Supervisor Fisher?
Aye.
Supervisor Hess?
Aye.
Supervisor Dunn?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, and the motion carries.
Okay, the next two items were for information only, and I hope you've had a chance to look at the Children's Services Act information that was presented. Mrs. Jury did a wonderful job at Finance Committee. The second item, of course, was our Davenport review for the different ratios, and hopefully the board will have a time soon that we'll schedule a work session. Item number 6, the county administrator provided information and recommendation for county commission compensation, and the committee recommended setting a new rate schedule, and that would go and coincide along with the the upcoming budget process, and would not actually be implemented until July 1st, 2017. Mrs. Garten had looked at this, and it looked like it had not been reviewed since at least 1992, those rates being changed. So what was recommended by the Finance Committee was that the board subcommittees would be at $50 a meeting, Planning Commission at $150 a meeting. We looked at Board of Equalization for $100 a meeting up to 4 hours, and then $200 a meeting greater than 4 hours. Parks and Rec Commission had not received a meeting compensation, and so it was recommended $50 a meeting. Board of Zoning Appeals, $50 a meeting, and the Social Services Board and Electoral Board, there would be no change in the compensation that they are currently receiving. So I would like to recommend the new schedule for our upcoming budget process.
Second.
And the second? Discussion, anyone?
It's clear that the board subcommittees, that the payment does not apply to members of the Board of Supervisors.
Thank you for,
Yeah, voting members.
yes, voting members.
Well, board subcommittees, the board members would be voting members too. Isn't that what we're talking about, committees of the board, like?
Yes, but
Code
this
and
is our
ordinance and-
citizen, this is for citizen members.
Right.
Further discussion, anyone? Supervisor Dunn?
Aye.
Supervisor Hess?
Aye.
Supervisor Fisher?
Aye.
Supervisor Lofton?
Aye.
Supervisor Wells?
Aye.
Supervisor Slaughter?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, and the motion carries.
That takes us to item number 7. The Fire and Rescue Deputy Chief provides information and requests discussion of the self-contained breathing apparatus for the 11 fire companies. You had information in your packet. There are currently 334 of these apparatus, most of which are reaching their life expectancy. 50% of these will reach their life expectancy in 2017, 40% ending in 2018. Let's see, approximately 175 will expire at the beginning of 2017. What the fire chief was asking for is that we would approve them pursuing grants that would help cover, hopefully, the lion's share of the cost of these apparatus. The apparatus are roughly $7,000 apiece, and there's various other costs associated with putting them into place, such as the mask and so forth. So the Finance Committee recommended that we proceed with the grant application. It does not compel us to move forward if there's a matching such that we do not feel it's appropriate, but it does allow Fire and Rescue to pursue having those grant applications written. And the cost, of course, for the grant application writing is $600. They do have that money in their budget to take care of the writing process. So I would recommend approval, make a motion for recommendation of approval.
Motion is approve. Is there a second?
Second.
And the second, is there any discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Supervisor Lofton?
I came away with a slightly different take on this than Supervisor Slaughter. My point in the committee was that once, right now, the breathing apparatus is coming from several different sources. Some volunteer companies have bought their own. Frederick County has bought some, and some has been donated, and we've gotten some from other entities like the federal government. My point is that once this grant is submitted, it's been noted that if the grant is received in any amount, that it would not be wise for Frederick County to turn down that grant because that could impact future grants that we apply for. So I think we need to resign ourselves to the fact that it total cost is about $4 million. The grant may cover $3 million. And so anything less than $3 million that we get from the grant, the county will be looking to pick up that cost. So we are pretty much obligating ourselves for any cost less or more than $1 million should we get this grant in total.
Supervisor Dunn?
Can we ask Fire Chief for a question or comment?
I'm sure he'd be happy to do that.
May I, while the chief is coming to the podium, may I just
Sure.
interject one comment regarding what Mr. Lofton has said, or would you rather hear
Go
from the
ahead.
chief first?
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
In regard to Supervisor Lofton's comment, all of these apparatus, it appears to be very, very necessary. So irregardless, somehow we're going to have to provide this apparatus to our fire people, the way I understand it. And it's for their protection from harmful elements that potentially could be health risks down the road.
Thank you. Supervisor Dunn's question, I think, first.
Okay.
We'll see if there are others.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, good evening.
Good evening. So my question is, can you comment on Mr. Lofton's comment that if you turn down a grant, does that preclude further grants down the road? Second question is, do you have any idea of approximately what the county commitment would be in a Fire and Rescue Association meeting earlier this month? I've heard a 10% commitment, but nothing higher than that. So if you can elaborate on that, that'd be helpful.
I can't be sure of what the commitment would be based on a percentage, because there's 50-50 grants, there's 90-10 grants, and that's up to the grant committee as to what that split would be. So I wouldn't be able to give you an accurate answer to that. I've seen it across the board.
Okay. Second question, comment. I did read the commentary. You currently have 5 different types of systems, is that correct?
Same manufacturer, but 5 different versions of it.
So a person in one station who's providing rescue in another station as a backup might have to learn up to 5 systems, is that correct?
Possibly.
And so if you have a new system, you'd have a uniform standard across the board?
Yes.
And that uniform standard would make services to those that are receiving those services a lot better?
It would, and it would help us regionally too.
And the life expectancy of those services is approximately 25 years, is that correct?
Roughly about 20 years, 15 to 20 years, depending on the standards. And we live by standards. Some of those come earlier, some come later. But yes, it would at least give us 15 years out.
So this would provide a benefit to the citizens when they have a need for service under life-threatening conditions?
Yes.
Thank you.
Other questions for Chief? Supervisor Lofton?
Chief Lindenberg, as I understand it, the grant process may make a decision at what point?
We could have something that is early as spring, but more likely it'd be midsummer before we knew anything.
And then the timing, once we have received notification that we're successful in any amount in this grant, what is the time frame to get that money spent?
12 months.
So 1 year.
Yes, sir.
Other questions?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman. And the cost per unit, which I think was like $7,000, if you can find a item that meets the need, but is less than the stated price, there's nothing that prohibits you from getting a higher quality but lower cost item. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Other questions, Chief? I guess just a comment if I could. I mean, grants are an excellent way to leverage money. It's a necessary item. It'd be nice if we could phase them in such that we don't face the issue of replacing them all at one time in the future. So,
Yes, sir.
thank you, sir.
Thank you.
But, Mr. Chair, on that point, which I know that you said that a certain percentage were meant to be for 2017, and I'm thinking the items that I read, the rest were for 2018. Is there any possibility to move any of that beyond 2018 without threatening the life of anybody?
Sir, there's possibilities, because that would be, there's no specific date in 2018, it's just a recommended standard, so there is a possibility.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes. Further discussion, anyone? Yes, sir. Supervisor Lofton.
Mr. Chairman, I don't know why the point I'm trying to make seemed to be misinterpreted. I am not saying we do not apply for this grant. I agree that we need this equipment, and I applaud the chief for trying to standardize the equipment. I think that's very forward-thinking. My point is that once we apply for this grant, I want everyone to understand that we, as the chief has said, we could be as notified as early as next summer. We could be, the county would be looking at several $1 million in a request for this equipment. I just want everybody to understand that. I don't think there's any turning back once we get this grant started. That was my point.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Further discussion, anyone? Supervisor Slaughter.
I think the point, though, and I understand your concern, Supervisor Lofton. I think the things that we talked about at Finance Committee, that even if they are awarded the grant, it doesn't mean that we have to move forward. And I understand you're saying that to turn something down that's been given to you. But again, I feel these are very necessary. At some point, we're going to have to bite the bullet and provide the equipment to these fire and rescue people that are putting their lives on the line every day. So
That was my point.
Further discussion, anyone? Supervisor Dunn?
Aye.
Supervisor Hess?
Aye.
Supervisor Fisher?
Aye.
Supervisor Lofton?
Aye.
Supervisor Wells?
Aye.
Supervisor Slaughter?
aye.
Chair votes aye, and the motion carries.
Okay, and the last item on the agenda was regarding the upcoming budget priorities. And we have a tentative calendar in your packet, and hoping to, at our next work session, which is November the 16th, if supervisors, members of the board would like to submit any priorities, concerns, or requests, if we could have those in no later than November the 9th, so that they could be prepared to be dissembled in our agenda packet. Thank you. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, ma'am. All right. Will bring us to conditional use permit 1116 for Jessica Richardson. Mr. Klein.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the Board of Supervisors. This evening, you're here for a conditional use permit at 102 Barbados Place in Stevens City. The conditional use permit is a request for a cottage occupation for an in-home daycare. This is located in the Opequon Magisterial District, and the property is presently zoned RP, or Residential Performance. The current land use is a single-family detached residence, and the proposed use, again, is a cottage occupation for an in-home daycare. Here is an overview of the site, which is located within a cul-de-sac in the Albin subdivision. The property consists of a single-family detached home. The daycare would be located in the front of the property, and the rear of the property, which includes a fenced backyard, would be used as an outdoor play space. The subject property, again, is located within the Albin Village subdivision on a cul-de-sac and is surrounded by other single-family detached homes. This in-home daycare facility has been in operation for more than 2 months within the principal residence, and the applicant currently cares for 9 children. This request would be for an in-home daycare facility for up to 12 children. A licensed in-home daycare facility is a permitted use through a cottage occupation in the RP or Residential Performance District through an approved conditional use permit. An in-home daycare facility is defined by the Frederick County zoning ordinance as a facility in which more than 5 children, not including those children related to the people who maintain the facility, are received for care, protection, guidance during part of a 24-hour day. The applicant has a designated drop-off and pickup within the driveway for her clients and has provided a fenced outdoor play area in the rear of the property so that the children may go outdoors throughout the day. The drop-off and pickup of children is staggered throughout the morning and evening hours, which would prevent any traffic from queuing or parking along the street. Should the Board of Supervisors find this use appropriate, the Planning Commission at their October 5th meeting recommended the following conditions. All review agency comments shall be complied with at all times. The hours of operation shall be permitted from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., Monday through Friday. The applicant shall satisfy the licensing requirements of the Virginia Department of Social Services and the County of Frederick. The applicant would be permitted 1 small cottage occupation sign, and other than those children residing on the property, there shall be no more than 12 children being cared for at any given time. Other than the persons residing on the property, there shall be no more than 1 additional employee, and any expansion or modification of this use would require the approval of a new conditional use permit. The applicant is here this evening, Ms. Jessica Richardson, to answer any questions you may have as is staff. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions for Mr. Klein, anyone?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
We indicate 1 small cottage occupation sign. Are there any further specifications?
Per the zoning ordinance, cottage occupation signs are allowed to be 4 square feet. That would be the only restriction.
A question.
Yes, sir.
As far as the homeowners association, signs, commercial signs and residential yards?
We typically do not enforce homeowner covenants. However, the applicant has provided documentation showing that the homeowners association would not object to having a small cottage occupation sign in the front of her residence.
Okay.
Other questions for Mr. Klein?
Has anyone objected in that neighborhood?
We have received 2 objections from adjacent property owners, and Ms. Richardson can speak to how she is addressing those concerns of her neighbors.
Other questions, Mr. Klein? Anyone? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Ms. Richardson, anything you'd like to add?
Good evening. Yes, I, along with my sister, provide childcare for 9 children, and we did have a complaint about the parking. So I got with all of my parents, and I actually park in a different, like in front of my house in the yard, and the driveway is completely open for everybody to park in there, and it is staggered. So it's very sporadic that the parents come in and out, not all at one time. And then we have the whole front of my yard where there's a big pine tree. The whole front is open for people to come in and out and park.
All right, thank you. Questions, Ms. Richardson, anyone?
Yep. Mr. Chairman,
Done.
so on your property, you have people, 9, 10 cars, periodically between 7 and 9 that will drop children off, and then between like 3 and 6 or 4 and 6 they're picking them up?
Great. It's normally the hours of like 7:15 to like 8:39. They stagger in the mornings and the same.
And do those cars come and stay for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, an hour?
No, it's a quick in and out. Like
They're
they get a
parking,
sheet.
5 minutes and gone?
Right. Correct.
Do those cars interfere at all with your neighbors' parking capabilities? Are they parking in front of their house, in front of your house, in your driveway?
No, it's all in my driveway and then on my property line in front of the house.
So it's not affecting your neighbors' property lines or the streets there?
No, sir.
Thank you.
Other questions, Ms. Richardson, anyone?
Would you be willing to reduce the number? Apparently you're operating with 9 children now?
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
How long have you been doing that?
For a couple months now.
A couple months?
Yes, sir.
Would you reduce that down to 5?
Well, I actually am in with my sister, so we have 2 people. it's not just me.
I'm just asking.
Oh,
I'm asking, would your group, your sister and yourself, be willing to reduce the number of children in the daycare center down to 5?
I don't know how I would do that with the parents. Like, I'm providing childcare for full-time workers, so I would say,
understand.
no, sir.
I'm just asking. 9 is a lot, 12 is a lot.
Right, yes,
It's
sir.
a business.
Yes,
It's a full business.
absolutely,
It's not-
yes.
I'm having a hard time with cottage industry.
Okay.
2 or 3 kids, you know, you're watching for that in a residential neighborhood. I understand, I live in a residential neighborhood, have people who do that. But once you start getting past that 5, you're in business. And you're running a child daycare service that I think needs to be a freestanding business, not out of a house, in a residential neighborhood. That's in my district, so I'm just being very candid with you.
Okay.
If you can convince me differently, I'm more than willing to listen.
We have plenty of room. I mean, I have 2 people at all times. It's me and my sister. We're always there. We have a majority of older children, preschoolers. So very self-sufficient. I mean, we do preschool with them, you know, teaching shapes and colors and stuff like that. So it's not like I have a bunch of babies or toddlers
No, I understand.
running around.
You do have a business. Yes, ma'am.
Other questions, Ms. Richardson?
Yep.
Yes, sir.
What are the complaints from your neighbors? Is it traffic or is it something else?
Also, there was a noise when we're outside. They were complaining about too much noise. I mean, it's just the kids playing. We're not screaming and carrying on. They're literally just running through the yard playing.
Is your backyard fenced or?
Yes, sir, it is fenced, completely fenced in.
So they're playing inside that, so it's a noise issue, and your neighbors have a traffic issue?
Yes, that,
And during the warmer months, September, October, November, and June, July, August, I'm assuming that they go outside?
yes, we'll get them outside. I mean, I have a couple babies that I probably wouldn't take outside. That, you know, that's why we have 2, so we're able to switch off or whatnot. But yes, I mean, we would still be outside as long as it's not, you know, below freezing or anything crazy.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions, Ms. Richardson? Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Mr. Klein?
Just speaking to Mr. Wells' question, the zoning ordinance does allow by right for in-home daycare to have 5 children, and Ms. Richardson would not be required to get a conditional use permit or get any other kind of zoning, zoning from the county. Her request is specifically to go to 12 children, and 12 children is the cap imposed by the Virginia Department of Social Services for an in-home daycare facility. So she's within her right to ask for that, and through that, she's required to get a conditional use permit and a business license to apply for a state license. So that's the reason for the request.
Thank you, sir. This is a public hearing. Would anyone like to comment concerning this proposed? If you could come forward and share your name and magisterial district, please.
Yes, hi. I'm Charlotte Schuyler. I live at 103 Barbados Place, so I am in the house that's right across from Jessica Richardson. And just to be open about a conflict of interest, my child goes to her daycare. And I'd like to address just a few of the points that I heard. As far as the noise, I'm a writer for the Heritage Foundation. I work from home almost the entire time. I've never heard about the noise. Now, I'm in a different location, so I can't say that the complaints aren't valid, but I have heard little to no noise. I mean, occasional laughing and giggling, but I would never say that it was disruptive, and if it were, I would have an issue with it because I wouldn't be able to do my job. So that's the first point. And then I believe that at least one of her families brings at least 2 kids in a single car. So while she's caring for 9 children, there's not necessarily 9 cars. And as far as traffic, I don't understand what could be obstructing people from getting in and out. I mean, I'm there all day and I watch. It's a huge cul-de-sac. I mean, nobody's getting blocked in, especially the way that they're parking their cars now. I've even offered up my driveway to clients if they want to park in it. So I don't think, I mean, overall, I just want to be clear, she's doing a really tremendous service for the community. She has a great daycare at a very reasonable price, and so to shut her down would really put out a lot of families. Sorry, I'm a little nervous. I just think that it's very hard to find good daycare, and she's got something really good going, and I'd like to see it worked out.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else like to comment?
Becky Morrison, Gainesboro District. I'm sorry. I don't know the applicant or anything, but I'm going to address Mr. Wells's question. I taught in a daycare that was in a house, and we had over 20 children, and it worked very well. And so, you know, it is possible when you're organized to have that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone? Seeing no one, we'll close the public comment portion. So Peckin.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
I'd just like to make a couple of comments, if I can, previous to what I'm going to say. I'm not against childcare. I think it's a great idea. I believe in residences and houses and communities. Businesses have a place. I'm having a difficult time with the number of children. I understand it probably works well, but if I was living in that neighborhood, I don't know that I would want a business in my residential neighborhood. And that's where I am at this point. Based on that, I would move denial of CUP 1116 for Jessica Richardson cottage occupation for the in-home facility.
Motion is to deny. Is there a second?
A second for the purpose of discussion.
There's a second. Discussion?
Mr. Wells? I understand your frustration in balancing a homeowner's request to do a business with your comments. Is there an alternative that you can think of that would resolve the issue?
The alternative was the number of occupants in the building. And I addressed that question. She thought that would be difficult to do.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Follow up on that question, Mr. Wells, is 5 the kind of your firm number on that, or would something like 10? I mean, she's already got 9 in the facility now. We've heard some support for it. 12 seems to be the number pulled out of the state code.
Understand. I just brought out 5 to see where we were. She's occupying with 9 now. I could probably, if we left it at 9, not to exceed. I still have a problem with a business of that size in a residential neighborhood.
Further discussion?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Wells has a motion to deny, correct?
Correct.
Can I amend his motion?
You can amend his motion. You can offer an amendment.
I'll offer an amendment. No, he's voting to deny. I'll offer an amendment to limit the number of children to 9.
Motion
Oh, no,
to,
that'd have to be a substitute. So I'll offer him, I think it's a substitute, because the substitute then go before his amendment. Can I offer an amendment?
you just did.
Okay, I'll offer an amendment to limit it to 9.
Okay. Heard. Is there a second to the proposed amendment? Anyone?
Can I question, if
Second
it's a
before
motion?
discussion.
Okay, second for discussion. I question the parliamentary procedure of a motion to denial, and yet the motion, the amendment is for 9. I'm
Motion-
lost.
It's an amendment
To approve?
to approve
at 9
at a
is the
level of
amendment.
9 as
Okay.
opposed to deny. So discussion on the proposed amended motion. Anyone? All right, so we're about to vote on the amendment to approve at a number of 9. We're all clear? Supervisor Dunn?
Mr. Chairman, before we vote, I'm not clear, I'm not.
Yeah.
You have a motion to deny, how can you have an amendment for 9? If you approve 9, but there's still a motion to deny,
He can approve, we're voting now on a proposed amended motion, which is to approve at 9. If it fails, we go back to the original motion. Supervisor.
May I withdraw my motion of denial?
May.
I don't want to cause a melee here, but to simplify.
We're working our way through it.
we'll work our way through it. That's-
Whatever you would like to do, well,
You're fine.
I'll work my way through.
We would need second to concur if you wish to withdraw your motion.
I'll leave it to the chairman's decision as how he'd
Well,
like to handle
who was the
that.
second?
I was the
I think
second.
you were the second.
I'll concur.
Okay. So,
We have a,
Okay, so that motion's withdrawn.
still have to deal
what's the motion for amendment?
with the amended motion.
Which I thought had no second at that point in time, correct?
We had a second.
Okay.
We had a second for discussion.
I'm not an expert on parliamentary procedure, but I don't think you can amend a motion that got withdrawn.
Agreed.
So I think we need to start over.
That's what I was kind of hoping we would do.
I don't think you can withdraw the motion. Might as well just vote on the amendment, get that out of the way, then go back and let Bob do what he's going to do.
I believe,
Ms. Helm?
I believe that if the motion that has been amended has been withdrawn, then the amendment is also withdrawn, and we're back to the request that has been submitted. So if somebody wants to propose an amendment, I think at this point they could.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay,
A motion, sorry.
we're looking for a motion.
I'd like make a motion to approve with a limit of 10 children.
So now we have a motion to approve at the number of 10. Is there a second?
I'll second that for discussion.
And a second. Now discussion.
Mr. Chairman,
Supervisor Fisher.
I think 12 is an appropriate number. We've done this before. It's a conditional use permit. If for some reason issues develop with this, the conditional use permit can be withdrawn. If it becomes a nuisance to the neighbors, then this can be withdrawn upon those complaints. I just don't see an issue with the number 12 or the number 10 or the number 9. I think we're much ado about nothing here. I think it should be 12, so I can't support this motion either.
Okay, so the motion is to approve at a number of 10. Further discussion.
Would you want to amend it?
Supervisor Lofton.
Mr. Chairman, I understand Supervisor Wells' point, but if I'm hearing our planning department right, she could have 5 in there by right. So there's the business that's already established. And I myself don't have a problem with 12, but I certainly want to be cognizant of Supervisor Wells because it's in his district and he has to live with the citizens.
Sorry.
But also understand that the lady who has the business certainly needs to make it worth her time and effort to have that occupation there. And we've heard from someone who uses that service. And so that's why I seconded the 10, because I wanted this discussion to take place, because that's the thought I had, and there's no other means to throughout that thought. So that's my thought.
Further,
Mr. Chairman, I can make a motion to amend to the number 12.
I'll second that motion.
and a second for discussion of the proposed amended motion.
So, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
We have a motion by Mr. Hess for 10, I believe.
I'm sorry, do what?
We have a motion by Mr. Hess.
We have a motion and a second on the floor to amend it.
Okay, so we had,
That's the discussion.
okay. So, Mr. Hess, sorry. I would oppose Mr. Fisher's movement to 12. I think I'm comfortable with 10. It's a compromise between competing forces.
You can propose, but we're considering an amendment to 12. Further discussion? Anyone? So we're going to vote on the proposed amendment
For
to
12 or 10?
approval at 12. Supervisor Dunn.
Nay.
Supervisor Hess.
Aye.
Supervisor Fisher.
Aye.
Supervisor Lofton.
Aye.
Supervisor Wells.
Aye.
Supervisor Slaughter.
Aye.
Chair votes aye and the motion carries. We're now going to vote on the amended motion.
I thought that was.
Yes or no?
That was the amended motion.
Yes, I mean, on
Oh, okay, I see.
on the amended motion.
Right.
So this vote is for approval at 12,
This is
correct?
for approval at 12. Supervisor Slaughter.
I thought we just voted on the 12.
It was the proposed amendment.
Go to 12.
You voted on a motion to amend the original motion from 10 to 12.
Now we're voting on the amended motion.
Which is 12.
Yes.
Aye.
Okay, Supervisor Wells.
Nay.
Supervisor Lofton.
Aye.
Supervisor Fisher.
Aye.
Supervisor Hess.
Aye.
Supervisor Dunn.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, and the motion carries. Conditional use permit 1116 is approved as presented.
Oh, I'm sorry, was that a 5-2?
I'm sorry?
I didn't get the vote. Was that a 5-2, 6-1?
6-1.
6-1
Okay, thank you.
on the amended motion.
Thank you.
All right. Brings us to rezoning 10-16, Miller Hardware. Ms. Perkins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. This is an application to rezone a total of .63 acres of a 6.52 acre parcel from the RP Residential Performance District to the B2 Business General District with proffers. Now, this property is located on the north side of Fairfax Pike, Route 277, about 900 feet east of Warrior Drive. If I can direct you to the screen on your left, the entire 6-acre parcel is outlined in black. The current use of that property is a church, which is this piece here. And then the Miller Honda, in reference to, the Miller Hardware, excuse me, I'm a little mixed up tonight, is this piece right here adjacent to that parcel. Now, in regards to the subject rezoning of that smaller area, that area is shown in hatching. The area in blue is the subject B2 parcel, and then the hatching is the proposed rezoning, and then the remainder of the 6 acre is outlined in red. Now, the parcel is located within the sewer water service area and the urban development area, and the 2030 comprehensive plan shows the area with an urban center land use designation. So therefore, the request to the B2 is consistent with the goals of the comprehensive plan. Now, with this rezoning request, the applicant has proffered a number of things. First, they have proffered to restrict the use of the area to accessory outdoor storage, accessory structures, stormwater management, utilities, and buffers. They've proffered that access to the property will be from the Miller Hardware site. The subject area will be boundary line adjusted into their property within 30 days of the rezoning approval, and they've also proffered $800 to fire and rescue. Now, the Planning Commission held a public hearing for this at their October 5th meeting. They did recommend approval. So tonight, following the public hearing, staff is seeking a decision from the board on this requested rezoning. With that, I'd be glad to answer any questions, and Mr. Evan White is here on behalf of the application.
Thank you, ma'am. Questions for Ms. Perkins, anyone? All right, apparently not. Mr. Wyatt, sir.
Thank you, Chairman DeHaven, members of the board. I'm Evan Wyatt with Greenway Engineering. We are representing Miller Hardware with this rezoning request. The purpose of the application is to allow for an expansion of the existing Miller Hardware facility, even though this aerial does not show the acreage that we're talking about. It sits roughly in this area right here. You can see that the current Miller Hardware facility has an existing outdoor storage area, which is located here. The purpose of this rezoning, very simply, is to acquire land that would be Zone B2 to allow for the outdoor storage area to be relocated in with this area, then which would set forth the ability to do a building expansion of the existing facility. The access to this, there's currently a commercial entrance right here, which would be where it would be served. Of course, Miller Hardware has worked closely with the church. There's a legal agreement that's been drawn up between both parties, and everybody is comfortable with the fact that this area would be limited to the outdoor storage components, as well as for the common share buffer and screening easement that would be required between the B2 and the RP uses. So with that said, Mr. Chairman, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Questions for Mr. Wyatt?
Question, Chairman.
Yes, sir. Supervisor Lofton.
Mr. Wyatt, Would there be any external access to this particular storage area? I see that it also abuts a parking lot up there to the north.
Yeah, and that's why we wanted to make sure the proffer was clear. This area of the parking lot, I think, is where you're referring. That's part of the overall parking for the complex with the other commercial uses. There would be no breach, if you will, of the curb cut here. The access simply would be, they would be coming in here and accessing it in that area and back out. So there's no change to the configuration of the parking lot as it stands today.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to confirm that.
Other questions, Mr. Wyatt? Anyone? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
This is a public hearing. Would anyone like to comment concerning this proposed rezoning? Anyone? Seeing no one, we'll close the public hearing portion. I think this is O'Peckin.
Mr. Chairman, I would move that approval of the rezoning request number 1016 for Miller Hardware as submitted by Greenway Engineering.
Motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Second. Any further discussion? Anyone? Supervisor Slaughter.
Aye.
Supervisor Wells.
Aye.
Supervisor Lofton.
Aye.
Supervisor Fisher.
Aye.
Supervisor Hess.
Aye.
Supervisor Dunn.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, and the motion carries. Rezoning number 10-16 is approved. Pump and haul application. Ms. Perkins.
Again,
They're always fun.
Again, thank you. This is a request for a pump and haul permit for an existing residence at 935 Brill Road in Star Tannery. Now, this approximately 2-acre property contains an existing 3-bedroom, 1-bath dwelling that's about 868 square feet, constructed in around 1941. Now, the frontage of this property, including a portion of the dwelling, is located within the 100-year floodplain. As you can see on the map to your left, the subject property is outlined in black, and you can see that area in blue that kind of runs along the road is the floodplain. And this is a picture of the structure for the request. Now, the subject property currently does not have an approved sewage treatment system. The health department has gone out to the property, and they concluded that an on-site sewage facility for this property is not possible due to a number of factors that were outlined in the memo. And the property owner has been unable to obtain an off-site easement to facilitate a drain field. So this property appears to have addressed the requirements for the county code to apply for a pump and haul permit. They have also, the property owner has also established a contract with Martin's Pumping Service to haul the sewage from the property. So tonight, a decision from the board on this permanent pump and haul permit is being requested. I would be glad to answer any questions you may have, and the property owner is also here should you have questions for them.
Questions, Ms. Perkins? Anyone? Thank you, ma'am. Property owner, have anything they'd like to add? All right. Discussion. Recommendation.
Mr. Chairman, this is Back Creek. I truly don't like pump and hauls, but given the fact that they've got 2 acres of land basically, and the health department can't find a way for them to have any kind of system there for the owners to get some use out of the property, I would make a recommendation that we approve the request for a pump and haul permit for 955 Brill Road, Star Tannery, with all the conditions as noted in the packet exist.
This motion to approve, is there a second?
Second, Mr. Chairman.
And a second. Is there any discussion? Supervisor Dunn?
Aye.
Supervisor Hess?
Aye.
Supervisor Fisher?
Aye.
Supervisor Lofton?
Aye.
Supervisor Wells?
Aye.
Supervisor Slaughter?
Aye.
Chair votes no. Motion carries. Pump and haul is approved. Now brings us to resolutions, revenue sharing applications, support of Jubal Early Drive. Mr. Bishop.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. As you have noted, this evening, we are looking at our annual process of applying for revenue sharing funds. We are putting in applications totaling approximately $5.6 million for the following two projects. First of which is the remaining funds for Jubal Early Drive, which was approved last year through this program for nearly $5.9 million. The total project cost estimate is a little over $18.6 million, so we're seeking the balance that would get us to a full 50% match, which in this case is $3.439 million. That project is depicted on the map to your left. It is the yellow line that comes from the city of Winchester to Route 37. This project, as you may be aware from the discussions of the Willow Run project, does include an interchange with Route 37 near Rock Harbor Golf Course. The other project which we're seeking to gain additional revenue sharing funds on is the Tevis Street extension, what we often refer to as the Northern Y, not to be confused with the project that we have ongoing with MMA and have agreements in place for them with the I-81 bridge itself, the roundabout, and the airport road extension. This is the part that comes north off of that. As you can see on your map here, of course, on the southern part of the map, you have the roundabout. What we are addressing here is the leg that comes north out of the roundabout. And let me see, I'll draw it on here for you. Basically, this segment coming north out of the roundabout and going to Route 522, and of course an intersection with 522. Previously, there have been revenue sharings on this project in the amount of $700,000, which were also applicable to the roundabout and bridge. What we're applying for is simply for construction for this segment. We spent a number of those funds toward design, which is why I had such a detailed picture to be able to show you, because we have already reached 30% design on that. However, a lot of that money has been expended toward design of the bridge. And as we seek to move forward with Glaze as our private partner for construction of this leg, we want to get some construction funds on there through revenue sharing to make that an easier process. To that end, we're looking to apply for just under $2.2 million in revenue sharing for this segment of the project. With that, I can take any questions you may have on either one of these projects. You may notice that the resolution itself is somewhat different than what you had in the past. VDOT has released a new template. You're probably used to doing one resolution for all of our applications. Their template was fairly specific, so out of an abundance of caution, I made sure I put those on separate resolutions to try and save us from having any redos or anything like that. And that's why that looks a little bit different than perhaps you're used to.
Thank you, sir. Questions for Mr. Bishop? Anyone?
Just a quick question. The intersection with 522, is that due to be signalized?
Yes, that would be signalized.
Other questions for Mr. Bishop? Anyone? How would the board like to handle the request?
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we approve resolution number 42-16 as an endorsement of the Jubal Early Drive Revenue Sharing Project.
Second.
And second? Any discussion? Supervisor Dunn?
Aye.
Supervisor Hess?
Aye.
Supervisor Fisher?
Aye.
Supervisor Lofton?
Aye.
Supervisor Wells?
Aye.
Supervisor Slaughter?
Aye.
Chair votes aye and the motion carries. Second one?
Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion to approve resolution number 43-16 as an endorsement of the Tevis Street Extension Revenue Sharing Project.
Heard the motion. Is there a second?
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Second. Is there any discussion? Anyone? Supervisor Slaughter?
Aye.
Supervisor Wells?
Aye.
Supervisor Lofton?
Aye.
Supervisor Fisher?
Aye.
Supervisor Hess?
Aye.
Supervisor Dunn?
Aye.
Chair votes aye and the motion carries. Thank you. Proposed ordinance amendment, discontinuance of non-conforming uses. Ms. Perkins?
Thank you. This is a proposed amendment to the subdivision ordinance to update the minimum right-of-way necessary to create a family division lot. Currently, the subdivision ordinance requires a 50-foot right-of-way to create those lots. However, the Code of Virginia states that a 20-foot right-of-way is the maximum that can be required. So this ordinance amendment in front of you proposes to change the 50-foot to a 20-foot to be in compliance with the state code. So Development Review and Regulations Committee discussed this at their August meeting, the Planning Commission at their October 5th meeting, and tonight we are seeking direction from the board as to whether this is ready to be sent forward to public hearing. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
So despite my introducing the wrong discussion, Ms. Perkins is right on target.
Right-of-ways.
Questions for the proposed right-of-way widths of family lots? Mr. Lofton.
Ms. Perkins, as I understand it, we basically, there's no option here. We either approve it or we don't, right?
That's correct, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? How would the board like to handle this one?
Move it go forward for public hearing.
Second.
Motion to forward to public hearing. Any discussion? Supervisor Dunn.
Aye.
Supervisor Hess.
Aye.
Supervisor Fisher.
Aye.
Supervisor Lofton.
Aye.
Supervisor Wells.
Aye.
Supervisor Slaughter.
Aye.
Chair votes aye and the motion carries. Thank you, ma'am. Do you perchance have discontinuous and non-conforming uses?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
This is an amendment to the zoning ordinance as it pertains to the discontinuance of non-conforming uses. Now, currently, the zoning ordinance states that if a non-conforming use is discontinued for a period exceeding 1 year, it is deemed abandoned. The Code of Virginia, however, states that a 2-year period is required before the use can be deemed abandoned. So this revision, again, it's a cleanup exercise, proposes to change the 1 year to a 2-year to be in conformance with the state code. Again, this was discussed by the DRC at their August meeting, the Planning Commission at their October 5th meeting, and again, we're seeking the board authorization to take this forward to public hearing.
Thank you, ma'am. Questions, Ms. Perkins, anyone?
Just a question.
Yes, sir. Supervisor Dunn.
Can a county have something different than state code, or does the state code require?
We have to follow the state code.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Sorry, Mr. Chairman. I would only point out that Mr. Williams actually asked me to speak on this. The code does state 2 years. There is a Supreme Court decision that appears to say that we are required 2 years, but it doesn't say shall. The more conservative position and the position that I believe that we ended up recommending to planning was that that they take a 2-year proposal, but I actually did the memo on that, so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's helpful. Other questions, anyone? How would the board like to handle?
Mr. Chairman, I would move for approval of the resolution directing the Planning Commission to hold a public hearing regarding Chapter 165 zoning, nonconforming uses, structures, and signs.
Motion to send forward to public hearings. Or second?
Second.
Second, is there any discussion? Supervisor Slaughter.
Aye.
Supervisor Wells.
Aye.
Supervisor Lofton.
Aye.
Supervisor Fisher.
Aye.
Supervisor Hess.
Aye.
Supervisor Dunn.
Aye.
Chair votes aye and the motion carries. Proposed ordinance amendment, removal of motorcycle repair in the B2 district. Ms. Perkins.
Thank you. As you stated, this is an amendment to the zoning ordinance. This is to remove motorcycle repair as a permitted use in the B2 district. Now, this amendment would include the use in the M1 and the M2 districts. Currently, the ordinance allows motorcycle repair in the B2 and the B3 districts as a permitted use. So this change would bring this use into a line with automobile repair, which is currently permitted in the B3, M1, and M2 districts. So it would really classify motorcycle repair as we currently classify automobile repair, instead of allowing it in our general commercial district. So this followed the same track as the other amendments, DRC at their August meeting, Planning Commission at the October 5th meeting. And again, we're seeking board authorization to send this forward to public hearing.
Questions, Ms. Perkins? Supervisor Fisher.
Current zoning for Harley-Davidson?
The Harley-Davidson isn't a strictly repair operation. That's treated as a dealership with the primary use as sales with accessory repair. It's the same way we treat automobile sales facilities, where the primary use is sales, accessory is repair. So the way those are allowed would still be in the B2 district. It wouldn't change for them. This is strictly repair operations.
Mr. Chairman.
Supervisor Dunn?
Does this affect any existing business? Would this put any existing business owner out of business? Would any existing business owner have to go through a different permit process?
No. And if there was an existing business in the B2 that did strictly motorcycle repair, they would be considered vesting because they were in operation prior to this ordinance being in effect.
So it would not affect any existing business now, would not put them out of business or anything of that nature? Thank you.
Supervisor Lofton?
Do I understand this correctly, that we are making this change based solely on the standard industrial classification? Because I'm having a hard time understanding why I can let a car dealership or a motorcycle dealership do the same work that a motorcycle repair shop would do in that district, but we're not allowing it because of its classification?
Correct. Repair and sales are different classifications. Correct. So what this resulted from a zoning violation where a site that was originally a motorcycle repair had transitioned into an automobile repair. At that point, it wasn't permitted, so we had to deal with that use and getting it relocated to a proper zoning district. So we felt it was a good time to go back and change the ordinance to ensure that we were classifying similar uses and we're having them in the same zoning district so that you weren't treating automobile repair differently than motorcycle repair and having them in different zoning districts where one couldn't go in the other. But
I understand that, but I still am having a hard time of saying that an automotive dealer, just because they have a couple cars out front they're going to sell, can do all the repair that they want, but yet someone who's doing just repair can't be in that district.
Automobile dealerships is SIC 55, whereas repair is SIC 75. So they're two different SICs where
So that's what I'm saying.
and the primary use has to consist of 75% of the operation. So you have to be primarily sales with accessory service. So you couldn't have a primarily service facility with just a little bit of sales and have
Is that based on revenue?
It's based
or
on square
volume?
footage.
Square footage?
When they do the site plans, correct. Display areas, lot area, internal display areas, as opposed to repair bays.
Okay, thank you.
Concept's always been as an accessory to the primary use. Still the same struggle. But.
Okay.
Further discussion, anyone? Are we ready to send it forward to public hearing?
I move we send it forward to public hearing.
Motion to send it forward to public hearing. Is there a second?
Second.
Second. Any further discussion?
This is just send it forward. I'll go along with that, but it doesn't mean if I don't agree with it later that.
Understood.
Okay, being clear.
Good. Are we ready? Supervisor Dunn?
Aye.
Supervisor Hess?
Aye.
Supervisor Fisher?
Aye.
Supervisor Lofton?
Aye.
Supervisor Wells?
Aye.
Supervisor Slaughter?
Aye.
Chair votes aye and the motion carries. That brings us to board liaison reports. Are there any? One. Seeing no one. Citizen comments on any issue they might like to bring forward.
Good evening, Jellen. Alan Marson from the Gainsborough District. We've heard some very wonderful reports tonight. Fire and Rescue needs to replace outdated and expiring equipment, potentially $1 million plus. Parks and Recs is working on a new master plan, $9 million plus. The Fourth High School, that was $92 million, dropped down, but in a newspaper article a few weeks ago, it is reaching again for $94 million. So, you know, in speaking in terms of government, $1 million here, $1 million there, and pretty soon you're talking about real money. Now, putting that on top of the 6% real personal property tax rate increase we had at the 2016 budget to help pay for some of this, and then the new reassessment coming out with an average of 7.5% across the county, which in my case, my primary lot is at over 10%. The land value alone is approaching 20% on a 39-year-old facility that has never been upgraded or improved. If We are tagging the assessment on top of the rate. That is going to be a 17 roughly % increase across the board. Typically, rates are adjusted with assessments, but that can be anywhere because from what I can see, the county is in a race to see how much money they can spend, and then they're looking for ways to catch it up with the tax rates and tax bases and assessments and all of that. Being retired and living off of Social Security, I can't handle a 12 to 18% real estate tax bill increase. Whether it's called a tax rate increase, an assessment increase, when the check I write this year is bigger than the check I wrote last year, this is a tax increase. Fire equipment, very necessary. But we have allowed this equipment to get to the point that it is imminently in need of replacement. Parks and Recreation, we have some of the better parks and recreation facilities in the area. They've done a tremendous job. But the whole concept I'm seeing here is we are reaching way higher than the taxpayer can afford. And nobody in government is addressing that. It's a race. Can we spend more before we drive taxpayers out of the county? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
Good evening. I'm Ruth Perrine, and I live in the Shawneeland located in the Back Creek District. I co-chair the Citizens Committee to preserve the Clouser House, and I am now a board member of the Clouser Foundation. I just want to thank you on behalf of the committee and the foundation for your decision at the last Board of Supervisors meeting to grant us another 120 days to continue our efforts to save the Clouser House. This is a true example of honoring your mission statement. We have received the letter from Dr. Wang of the Department of Conservation and Recreation stating that the proposed uses for the house will not change the dam classification. This completes one of the stipulations presented to us by the Public Works Committee concerning the preservation of the Clouser House. We continue our work on this project and will continue to keep you abreast of the progress. On a different note, I just want to say I'm very pleased with Andrew Farrar's recognition. I would also like to add that Andrew created a wonderful map of Shawneeland with a legend that hangs in the old mail house that residents refurbished to a community pavilion. I'm very appreciative that he willingly listened to my suggestions and fine-tuned the map to provide a useful addition to our community. I'm very proud to have that map hanging in our pavilion. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone? All right, we'll close the citizen comment portion. Board of Supervisors comments. Are there any?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman.
Supervisor Slaughter.
Yesterday, I had the opportunity to travel with Mr. Bishop to the Commonwealth Transportation Board Forum, which was held at the Blue Ridge Community College. And it was a wonderful opportunity to have face-to-face discussions on priorities with the Commonwealth Transportation Board, the Secretary of Transportation, and VDOT staff. What we learned was, and I think this is not news to many of the board members, was that there were $9 billion in applications for the smart scale applications, which were just recently due, and that there is only $750 million in funding available for those $9 billion in applications. And it will be approximately 2 years before we would be allowed to apply again for smart scale grants. So in the spring, there will be public hearings to address the $750 million that would be awarded to the various applications that were submitted. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Supervisor Dunn?
Mr. Chairman, although we're a local government body, the next time we meet, we will have had a national election. That national election has the potential of affecting all of us on taxes, on immigration, on a host of items. And so I'd encourage the citizens of Frederick County to think through their policy choices on policy and set aside to some degree the personalities of both major candidates, many of whom are second, third, fourth, and fifth choices, and think through policy and make decisions on what you think best affects this country. Thank you.
Anyone else? Anyone? Supervisor Fisher.
Move to adjourn, Mr. Chairman.
To adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, aye. Aye. Thank you for your time and attention. We'll stand adjourned.